So you saw the thumbnail and you thought, if I click this video, John is going to give me some insight into the new meta around Sanguinary Guard. Well, you'd be right. Let's get into this week's tactics video. So, thanks for being here, my friends, and today we're going to be talking about Sanguinary Guard and how small squads of 3 of them could actually be the new meta for Blood Angels. So, I got an interesting comment on YouTube this week, and it was basically from Harrison, who I don't think I've met before, said 3 Sanguinary Guard are basically Blood Angels 8-bound. Use them exactly the same way. You've played against World Eaters recently, you know their effectiveness, so try some in the 3-man. And if we go back to last week's video where we looked at the best lists from the World Championships of Warhammer, then you'll see that 2 of the best lists, in fact the best 2, and I think I had the placing slightly wrong last week because Borja, the guy who finished highest, he reached out to me and he said he finished 11th in the World Championships. He was indeed running 2 times 3-man squads of Sanguinary Guard. And neither of those lists included 5-man Death Company. So 5-man Death Company were like a scalpel that you could send to deal with a problem. Maybe that isn't the case anymore, but maybe it's like a return of those 3-man Sanguinary Guard. Or really, it's not really a return, is it? It's the first time we've seen lots of little squads of Sanguinary Guard since they got their new rules. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a real-world example against the 8-bound that I came up against last week and I didn't deal with very well. So we'll look at how I could have dealt with that better. We're going to evaluate the survivability of these 3-man units of Sanguinary Guard against both Jump Death Company and Jump Intercessors, because those are the 2 units that would make sense if we're just going to try and swap them like for like. You could argue Vanguard Veterans are in there, but they don't really have any powerful weapons anymore, and with the removal of the Sanguinary Priest, I'm kind of just pushing them to the side. Maybe we'll look at them in a future video. We're going to evaluate potential damage outputs of all 3 squads and find out where the Sanguinary Guard excel. And then we're going to try and analyse why the top players are using these 3-man squads, and also that they're using them with no leaders. And that is a meaningful thing to consider, because Sanguinary Guard do get a pretty nice buff when they are led by a leader. They get -1 to wound in combat, but the top players are not using that. So they're feeling like the -1 to hit in combat is enough. So let's start with this real world example. Okay, so if we take this example from last week, and this was basically turn 1 deployment of World Eaters, where he had a 3-man unit of 8-bound, represented by the super awesome graphic that I made here, and another second 3-man unit of 8-bound behind this piece of terrain. So Blood Angels do have a lot of speed, and the speedy unit that I've got deployed here against the wall is a Death Company, so they could potentially jump into the middle. And unfortunately, my Jump Intercessors are down here, so it would be a very, very long jump into the middle, and probably not a potential option here. So in this battle, my option to kill these 3 8-bound, and I didn't want him to be holding more objectives than me and starting the game more points ahead. So I felt like I had to deal with this with something. Now, in this case, it was 5 Death Company and a Chaplain. So you can see they jumped out their 10 inches. I believe they advanced and charged. And then they're going to re-roll their charge because they're Death Company. And I guess that is one thing that Death Company get that is very useful. So I had like a 5-inch charge here with a re-roll. It turns out I didn't need the re-roll. So the Death Company idea would be to mop up these 8-bound and then potentially at least even up the game so he isn't getting ahead on primary scoring so early. And they did very much that. The Death Company jumped in. I think I killed these guys without using all the Death Company attacks. The squad of 8-bound was wiped, but in his turn, the other squad of 8-bound came straight out and wiped my Death Company. So sometimes when you're playing, you're not super familiar with every unit or every point of every unit. So if you're not super familiar with 8-bound, they are 140 points for 3. So in this case, I used 5 Death Company, which are 130 points, and a Chaplain, which is 75. So I spent 205 points here, essentially did a negative trade, right? So my 205 points killed 140 points of units, and then just got mopped up. In fact, the 3 8-bound here managed to slaughter the whole squad. I lost everything. The Chaplain, I think he had like a couple of saves to make. Maybe he survives, and maybe that makes it a somewhat decent trade, but he didn't. He died, and I lost the whole squad on the return. So this was a negative trade, a negative 75 point trade. it's not the worst idea in the world to trade if you feel like you need to get rid of the opponent's units. An 8-bound are a very dangerous unit that you probably want to get rid of. But in this case, this put me on the back foot. The Death Company were gone, and I was on the back foot for a lot of this game. Didn't help that Angron came back in turn 2, but whatever. So yes, I traded 205 points, 5 Death Company, plus a Chaplain for 140 points of 8-bound. And at the time in the game, I wasn't convinced, even if my Jump Intercessors had been flip-flopped and they'd been in the opposite position than the Death Company, and I could have gone centre board with the Jump Intercessors. I actually wasn't convinced that 5 of them can clear a unit of 8-bound. So let's look at what an 8-bound unit is. You know, it's 3 guys, toughness 6, 3 up, 5 up. And I think it was the 5 up that makes me worried, which is funny because actually the Jump Intercessor is only -1 AP for the most part. But I think the thing that probably had me more worried was Jump Intercessors on the charge are strength 6, 8-bounder, toughness 6. So straight away we're only winning on 4s, they're saving on 4s. That means like 75% of the hits are going to essentially do no damage. So if you imagine you've got 20 chainswords, you're going to hit 13 times, 75% of them are doing nothing. I was questioning if a unit of Jump Intercessors can actually kill a unit of 8-bound that they charge. If they can, then that's a great trade, right? 50-point trade up for me. That would have been the play if my Jump Intercessors had been deployed better. But regardless, I wasn't convinced that could happen, so I wanted to dive into this situation exactly as it is, because I think the point that Harrison made about 8-bound being a very strong unit in 3, well, Sanguinary Guard are basically this cost, right? They are 135 for 3. 8-bound on the charge, remember, World Eaters get +1 attack, +1 strength when they charge. The Sergeant has a Lacerator, so that's a 5 attack, strength 10. AP 2-3 damage, and that's actually pretty nasty when you swing it against Sanguinary Guard. And then the other 2 guys have Eviscerators, which are 7 attacks, strength 6, AP 2 damage. So this squad has a good amount of attacks and a good amount of damage. I guess, what's that, 14 2 damage attacks, 5 damage 3 attacks. This squad can do like 40 damage, which is arguably more than your 3 Sanguinary Guard. I guess your Sanguinary Guard have more EP, and you know, they've got more consistent damage, and they've got more OC as well, because typically they would hold a banner and they got some pistols. Not that the pistols really do much now, but anyway. So for the purpose of this video, let's consider using these Sanguinary Guard much like a unit of 8-bound. Now, if we look at survivability, when that 3-man unit of 8-bound smash into a unit of Jump Intercessors, these are the number of failed saves you will make statistically. So statistically, you could just, because these are all over 2 damage for the Jump Intercessors, you could just add them together. Statistically, you will fail 6 saves. So 5-man squad is wiped. Against the Death Company, statistically, you will fail 5, and that includes your Feel No Pain roll. So you might get a couple of 6s at the right point to save a model or something like that. So you might have 1 Death Company. Maybe if you're super lucky, you've got 2 alive. But statistically, they should wipe them as well. And then against the Sanguinary Guard, you are still failing 3.3 saves. So they are getting wiped by the 3-man unit of 8-bound. I guess the argument here could be that losing a smaller unit of Sanguinary Guard, like 135 points, would still be better than losing the 205 points that I ended up committing with my Death Company. So disappointedly, according to the math here, the Sanguinary Guard aren't in a great position. But in the 3-man, 1 model should live, as 2 failed saves only statistically kills 1. Right? Because Sanguinary Guard are on 3 wounds. So the Eviscerator guy kills 1 SG, you fail 2 saves with the Sanguinary Guard, so statistically they have the best chance. 1 Sanguinary Guard, arguably hopefully your guy with the banner, lives. The Jump Intercessors get wiped. The Death Company, like they said, they maybe spike some Feel No Pain, but they're probably going to be wiped. If we use Armor of Contempt, and we know Armor of Contempt is really good against on 2+ armor saves, the better your armor save, the more value you get out of Armor of Contempt, really. And if we use that here, then I guess if you spike against the Eviscerator, you may only end up losing 1 Sanguinary Guard. If you spike on your save here, you may end up losing none. So the Sanguinary Guard with Armor of Contempt is definitely, I feel like, worth the CP here. Because I think you go from probably just 1 guy alive, potentially on like a wound, to possibly 2 guys alive. If you're really lucky, you may actually only lose like 2 wounds off one model, depending on where the saves roll. I mean, it's kind of hard to say statistically you fail 0.7% or 0.7 of a save, right? Because that basically means like you will either save 1 or you'll save none, right? Most of the time you're probably going to fail, but sometimes you pass that save. So if you do pass that save and then you pass this 0.6, then yeah, the Armor of Contempt is super valuable. And that's maybe one of the things that we could consider. Armor of Contempt is good on the 3-man Sanguinary Guard, depending on what damage coming in. And 8-bound are a nasty unit that we sometimes have to deal with, so this is a good example. So, I've got lots more to come in this video. If you do think that you are learning something, or you think this is worthwhile in any way, shape, or form, please do consider subscribing to the channel. I do put out a tactics video basically every Friday, and I try and break down something in your Blood Angels list to make you a better Blood Angels player, to give you the knowledge of my failures when you get to the tabletop, and what good knowledge that is to have, right? Okay, so if we talk about damage against those 8-bound, then in orange, we've got the Assault Intercessors. In purple, we have the Death Company. In blue, or teal, we have the Sanguinary Guard, and in each of the situations I've included the +2 strength and 1 attack from charging, and in the right hand column we've included if we use them as our oath target. Bear in mind, Death Company don't need oaths, they reroll all their hits anyway. So Assault Intercessors, you know, they do 2.4 damage with the Power Fist, they do 3.3 damage with the Chain Swords, they do 2.5 mortal wounds, so they would basically kill about 2 of the 8-bound, and with oaths, they're likely to wipe them. Death Company, they'll always wipe them, but they don't bring any OC. So last week when I had my chaplain with them, you know, to give them OC, that is a tax that's maybe not needed anymore, because a Death Company unit would wipe the, you know, they would wipe the 8-bound, but then they're sitting on the center objective with no OC, which doesn't really give you anything. The Sanguinary Guard would leave 1 8-bound alive on 1 wound, and then with Oath, they would wipe them like 99% of the time. This would need to say 12, because it would need to be 4, 4, 4. So like 99% of the time with Oath, 3 Sanguinary Guard will wipe the 8-bound. Now, this was not factoring in any shooting damage, so arguably those Sanguinary Guard, which would have like basically 2 fails, kill 1 8-bound, 2 more fails, kill 1 8-bound, another fail, take an 8-bound down to 1 wound from 8.9, if you were able to do 1 damage to them with shooting or grenades or anything like that, then it would kill them without oaths, right? So 3 Sanguinary Guard, if they get 1 damage from somewhere else, they can wipe a unit of 8-bound. So this, we're going to do damage against a bunch of different things, because I was trying to find like what makes Sanguinary Guard just so good. Because in this situation, you know, they kind of still need oaths. The Jump Intercessors need oaths. The Jump Intercessors would kill them with oaths just the same as Sanguinary Guard would kill them. The Jump Intercessors are 45 points less. The Death Company are in a strange place because they need to have the chaplains. I think at the moment where Death Company are is you can play them with a 10-man and a chaplain. We've seen a few tournament lists do well. We've not seen any tournament lists now do well with 5 Death Company and chaplain. And that wasn't a pretty strong option before. That was the option that I used to win the GT. But we're just not seeing it anymore. It's just not happening. We're now looking at, it's almost like bring 10 Death Company with Lamartes or don't bother at all. Very few successful lists are actually bringing Astaroth or a regular chaplain. It's like Lamartes all the way. What about an Armiger, right? So like, what do Jump Intercessors do if they smash into an Armiger? Well, they do 4 damage, plus assuming you get that perfect charge where everyone's in engagement range, they do 2.5 mortal wounds statistically, so you can do like 6 damage to the Armiger. This Death Company squad, this column is Red Rampage this time, will do 11.2 damage with Red Rampage, right? They're just not going to kill an Armiger. Back in the day when they all had Power Fists, they would. Now they don't. So if they get some bonus, like if they could shoot away 1 wound or they could throw a grenade before they charge, then they're likely to kill it. But they're not going to do it just all by themselves anymore. The Sanguinary Guard into an Armiger will only do 5.6 damage. If you use Red Rampage, it will increase to 8.3. If you use Oaths, it increases to 11.1. So, again, we're not factoring any shooting damage, Red Rampage and Oaths, which is a big investment. But you will do 11 damage to an Armiger. They are 12 wounds, so you leave it on 1 wound. So again, if there's a way you can, you know, like a lot of Blood Angels lists are bringing fire support at the moment. ballistic dreadnoughts, vindicator tanks, gladiator lancers, if you've got anything that can chip off 1 damage at range, and you think you can guarantee those 3-man units the Sanguinary Guard can get in for the charge, then they're going to be able to finish off the armature. And that's pretty useful to do with 130 points of models. And then, you know, the good thing about the Sanguinary Guard, like I said, they're 2 OC each. So the second they kill an armature that's 6 OC on objective, and I mean, this doesn't just apply to armatures, right? There's other vehicles, like we talk about Death Guard Predators, they're toughness 10 with 12 wounds. I think they might even have 11 wounds, actually, a Predator tank. The -1 to hit against the Sanguinary Guard and their 4-up invuln helps a lot when they get swung back against with the armature. Obviously, the armature can get strength 10 AP 3, so being -1 to hit when he only has 4 attacks is meaningful, and 4-up invulnerable, meaningful again against a big AP 3. I mean, Death Company and Assault Intercessors only saving on 6s. Again, Sanguinary Guard there would be saving on 4s. So this one doesn't massively favour the Sanguinary Guard either, but it's not horrible. It definitely shows that you could make the 3-man Sanguinary Guard work. What about Wraith Guard? At this point I was trying to find a unit that I felt like the Sanguinary Guard would be really good at, and I came up with Wraith Guard because they're T7, and we know that Sanguinary Guard on the charge are T8. Strength 8. Strength 6 plus 2, right? So Strength 8. So I felt like Strength 8, they're perfect. And also, Wraith Guard don't have an invulnerable save, so we get the most out of AP 3. So this Wraith Guard would actually be like the best unit. Not that you fight Wraith Guard all that often, but they would probably be like a unit that hits the breakpoint for the Sanguinary Guard, and it hits the breakpoint for the AP. So what do Assault Intercessors do if they charge Wraith? Oh, Wraith Guard. Yeah, I've written Wraith Blades here. They are different units. Wraith Blades have a 4-up invuln, so it's Wraith Guards. They are the ones with... Basically, they're armed with like crazy strength 10 AP 4 flamers, unless they've changed it. And the Wraith Guard do not have an invulnerable save. The Wraith Blades do have. So the Wraith Guard don't have the invulnerable save, so the Assault Intercessors are lucky to kill 2 of them. The Power Fist does 1.8 damage. The Chainswords do 1.5. That is 3.3. So we kill 1 Wraith Blade. Maybe our mortal wounds kill the second. We'd be lucky. The Death Company... Well, their damage here against Wraith Blades is actually kind of terrible. I didn't realize how terrible it was. I guess this is why people are not taking Death Company. So the Death Company are likely only doing to kill 2 as well. The Power Fist does 4.7. The Viscerator does 2.7, so that probably kills 2. And then 10 Chainswords into those Wraith Blade actually only do 1 damage. And I guess this is the big thing, right? Like, if we go back, this would have been 12 more Power Fists. Now it's 10 Chainswords. So this would have been like 7 damage, it's now 1. So it just shows how bad the Death Company have lost damage, and not into every target, but into certain targets. So Wraith Blades, Death Company kind of do horrible against them. They kill 2.5. I guess with the rerolls, I mean, the rerolls are included in that. So maybe they kill 3. But they're likely to kill 2. Sorry, it's the Sanguinary Guard. So the Sanguinary Guard kill 2.5 because... Again, you are inefficient at Wraith Guards because they are 3 wounds each and you are 2 damage. So you kill 2.5 with Oath, they can kill 3. Now, I mean, killing 3 Wraith Guard isn't the worst thing in the world. It isn't the best thing in the world by a long shot. Again, we're not factoring any shooting damage. But even though this unit looked like I was, you know, I was on my 3rd slide here of maths and I'm like trying to find a unit that would do really well against. They do average. So I was like, oh my goodness, how many units I'm going to have to look at to try and find this unit that Sanguinary Guard are really good at. So then I looked at Berserkers. Imagine you're playing, we're back on World Eaters, and we're fighting against 10 Berserkers. Assault Intercessors, what do they do against Berserkers? Well, they kill about 3.5. With Oaths, they kill about 5, and then they maybe kill 1 more for the mortal wounds. So it's like 4.5 without Oaths, 6 with Oaths. How do the Death Company do against Berserkers? Well, they do not too bad. They kill 7.5. But again, you're no OC, so even if you go 7.5 and you outnumber them, you've got your 5 Death Company on the objective, they've got 2 or 3. It's still their objective, right? So they're hard to make work. I think the reason that these guys worked so far before, or worked so well before, is they just wiped units. They just, 5 Death Company, all with Power Fists, just wiped enemies. And then it didn't really matter about the OC nonsense that they have none, because they just wiped out the unit. Whereas now I think they don't wipe out the unit, so they are a lot weaker, and that's I'm basically at the point where I'm dropping all the 5-man Death Company from my list. I'm not playing them. I'm actually moving to Sanguinary Guard, and this is a good break point actually for Sanguinary Guard, because Sanguinary Guard are strength 8 when we charge now. So that is perfect against the toughness 4. We're going to wound on 2s. The AP 3 is also perfect because Berserkers don't have an invulnerable save. They're just on a 3-up save, so they're only saving on 6s. So without any oaths, we're going to kill 7 Berserkers, or like 6.99999, something like that. And if we use oaths, we're going to kill 9, and there's a like 0.5 chance. So there's a 25, like the last guy's got 25% of the time he's going to have to take a save as well. And on that 25% of the time, how often does he roll a 6? So there's a good chance that 3 Sanguinary Guard with oaths can actually wipe out all 10 Berserkers. So that could be meaningful. And again, we're not factoring anything from shooting. We're not factoring anything from grenades. I think most Blood Angels players have some fire support. So if you know I've got 3 Sanguinary Guard, I'm going into a squad of Berserkers, then pepper them with something. You've got Impulsors, you've got Predator tanks, Ballistic Dreadnoughts, kill 1 or 2 guys, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, if I can put, let's say, 2 las cannons, I know it's not super efficient to put 2 las cannons into a squad of Berserkers, but if I kill 2, all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, my Sanguinary Guard a good chance to pick up the rest of the squad. And it's only 130 points of Sanguinary Guard, and they are OC2. So finally, is this a unit that Sanguinary Guard excel against, right? Because if your Assault Intercessors only kill 4 or 5 of them, then the Berserkers murder a lot of the Assault Intercessors. If your Death Company only kill 7.5 of them, they probably keep the couple of... If I'm correct, Berserkers get to keep like 2 big special weapons, 2 big eviscerators or something. So they keep those 2 guys alive and they swing back and wipe half your Death Company. In the Sanguinary Guard case, there's 1 or 2 enemies alive. If you shot them, there's maybe none. If they do swing back, they're -1 to hit, and then you've got your 4-up invuln, and you've got your 2-up save. So Sanguinary Guard are probably best at just eating up, like, what do you call these? Marine equivalent models? Toughness 4, 3-up, 2 wounds? They'll just eat them up. And they'll eat them up in 3-man squads, and I guess this is why people are running multiple small 3-man squads of Sanguinary Guard, because while they will eat up those units, they are somewhat useful. Like, they are somewhat useful against Wraith Guard, they're somewhat useful against those Knight Armigers, and they are also pretty useful against something a bit more elite, like a Toughness 6. Eightbound. And I guess if you think of like Death Shroud Terminators, they're pretty much the same profile, like 2-up, 4-up, 3 wounds, toughness 6. So they're not quite as efficient against Death Shroud Terminators, but they're probably going to, like a unit of 3, they're probably going to pick up 2 pretty reliably. And again, it comes down to, do you have 1 las cannon you can shoot at the squad first? Then you're in good state. So like, why are Sanguinary Guard perceived as so good right now, I guess, right? And what makes them such a great pick in 3s? Because we've seen a lot of people attach 6 of them to Dante. We know that's good. We see that a lot. I would have thought if you were building a second squad of them, you probably want to attach them to a character as well, because the character gives them the -1 to wound. But I think there could be something about being said, like, we know Blood Angels are very good when we play as minimum size units. So they're very durable against low AP. Armor of Contempt is strongest against 1 AP, and it's pretty strong against 2 AP. So against like 1 AP weaponry, it improves survivability by 100%, and against 2 AP weaponry, it improves survivability by 50%. So if these small units get targeted, and I guess the idea is that they can be hidden, because there's only 3 guys, but if they do get targeted by low AP stuff, you can just play Armor of Contempt and shrug it off. Their damage output is pretty solid with the blades, you know, like 15 attacks at strength 8. That'll eat up, like, any 5-man Marine equivalent unit, they're just going to eat them alive with no buffs. 10-man with Oath of Moment, they're probably going to be very close to wiping them. OC2 per guy isn't the worst idea as well. You know, like, if you've only got 2 guys left, you're still 4 OC. That can contest and flip objectives. So I think, like, they've got better OC. They've got that invulnerable save now. They've got a single Infernal Pistol. I don't really think it's meaningful, but occasionally I guess you can shoot it. They've got grenades. They're fast. And, you know, they're kind of cheap, I guess, if you consider that unit of 8-bound. 140 points. I guess they're okay, like on like. Like, what would you rather have? I feel like the Eightbound do a little bit more damage. The Sanguinary Guard have more OC, more mobility. I really don't want to include the shooting because one Infernal Pistol always misses, but tiny bit of shooting and pretty good AP, right? AP3 is really quite meaningful into some targets. So I guess this is why a lot of people are starting to run 3-man Sanguinary Guard squads, and unfortunately the 5-man squad of Death Company is going the way of the dinosaur. We'll probably do another video at some point about 10-man Death Company, but people are winning tournaments with 10-man. We're just not seeing it with 5. So, yeah, what's the conclusion on all this, right? This video didn't go quite the way I expected, right? It seems 8-bound are a unit that Blood Angels can actually kill quite efficiently, right? We can actually kill 8-bound with Assault Intercessors, or Jump Assault Intercessors. I guess I just lack confidence in trying to wipe 3 8-bound with 5 Jump Intercessors. I mean, you've got to roll good on those mortal wounds. You need to statistically roll half on those mortal wounds, and I think those mortal wounds you get on the charge are so swingy, and it's questionable sometimes if you can even get everyone in engagement range to get a dice roll for everybody for those mortal wounds. The fact that their leader has a 3 damage lacerator at strength 10 is just crazy, and that's scary. I mean, it is scary. Like, he can wipe quite a lot of stuff if he rolls hot. However, what this did show is that the Sanguinary Guard is the only unit that have much chance of survival if charged by the 8-bound, right? The Jump Assault Intercessors and Death Company, they're just not there. They just don't have the survivability. We saw that last week. And against the low AP attacks, like AB2 is still good, but because you're on a 2-up save for the Sanguinary Guard, using Armor of Contempt, putting it to just saving on 3s, actually has a ton of value. I rarely ever feel Armor of Contempt is ever worth it on Jump Assault Intercessors and Death Company. I've used it more times than I care to admit, and I feel like it's never worth it. So, is it worth it on the Sanguinary Guard? Yes, 100%. Usually when enemies commit to killing Jump Assault Intercessors and Death Company, they're just dead, right? So the Sanguinary Guard excel against Toughness 4 due to their Strength 8 on the charge, and also because models, if they have got no invulnerable save, then the AP3 is meaningful. They'd happily pick up any 5-man Marine unit or equivalent reliably. They can perform actions. I was thinking about this as well, right? Like, if you lose 2 guys, it's not the worst thing in the world to have one Sanguinary Guard performing an action somewhere in the board when they've taken losses. Not too bad. With a tiny little bit of help, either from like 1 wound or from Oath of Moment, they can actually pick up a toughness 10, 12 wound armor unit pretty reliably with Red Rampage. Obviously, they're not efficient against 3 wound models or models with a 4-up invulnerable save or a 5-up invulnerable save due to the wasted AP. But I think they are a better option than the Death Company now. Like I said, hanging on to 4 OC when you only have 2 guys alive can be pretty meaningful. And hanging on to OC when you're battle shocked due to your banner could also be pretty meaningful. If anyone's unsure how that works, is the +1 OC for the banner gets added after the battle shock test. So, you know, at the end of the game where you need a guy to be alive and you don't want to, you can't use Insane Bravery, you don't need to, as long as the banner guy is the guy you kept alive, because even if he fails his battle shock, he'll be OC1, he can still hold something for you. And I've really struggled to maximize the Death Company in the 5 MSU units since the Codex. Their weapon removals have hit them so hard. And also, it wasn't even just weapon removals. They lost the rerolls to hit on shooting. So their shooting has gone from somewhat decent to nothing. And like I said, in that one example, they've gone from something like 9 damage to 1 damage. I'm just not seeing the value in 5-man Death Company anymore. So for me, it's time to embrace the gold. We're going to head back into the realms of more Sanguinary Guard. Steel Rain would be happy. I think it's time to cue the music and play the cowbell, because I've got a fever and the only way to cure it is more Sanguinary Guard. So let's go back to seeing what 3-man can do in the table. I'm going to be playing the battle report that's just passed on Wednesday night. So if you didn't check that out, you could check that out. If you want to dive into the World Championship list last week and see the 11th place Blood Angels list with its 2 units of Sanguinary Guard, and I think it was a 19th place Blood Angels list also with 2 units of 3 Sanguinary Guard. Both of those lists had an additional 6-man squad as well. So both those lists were 12 Sanguinary Guard split across 3 squads. That video is available for you to click now. If you'd like to support the channel, you can follow me over on Patreon, and for the price of a cup of coffee every month, help me out with everything I do. Thank you so much for getting to the end of the video. I really do hope you enjoyed it. Hit like, and I will catch you in the next video, my friends. By the blood are we made strong. Peace, brothers. Oh, spoiler. I have heard the rumor mill tell me that the Blood Angels detachment this December is supposed to come out on Christmas Day, which would make sense given the lore, but I guess we will see. So keep your eyes. As soon as the new Blood Angels detachment comes out, I'll try and make a video, even if it is Christmas Day. I really didn't want to work Christmas Day, but I will because I love you guys. So have a great weekend. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.